we should be good to go. Perfect. So what I like to do with these sessions is I've got a presentation that I'm going to run through, and I'll walk you through sort of how it all looks. But most importantly, feel free, guys, to shout out and ask me to stop or pause if you guys have any questions at all. So again, this is all about you guys and your comfort and making sure you've got all your questions answered. And on a go forward basis, as Connor said, we're sort of infinitely available. So, if you don't absorb everything today, no problem. You can refer to the video, or you can just give us a call anytime, and we're here to help out. So I will dive into this just as a baseline. Has everyone sort of had a chance to does everyone have a baseline understanding of what the device is, or do you want me to start from the beginning and kind of walk it through?
Yeah, maybe just walk us through. You know what I mean?
Perfect.
We sort of have a baseline about, that's the microwave technology to enhance the immune system and treat viral warts. But
Yep. Perfect. Okay. Let me know when you guys can see my screen. Can you guys see this?
We can see it.
All right. Perfect. Again, I can't see you. I'm looking at my screen. So if you guys have any questions, just yell at me.
Okay.
All right. So first thing, just as a general intro before we get into the actual objectives of the training, as an introduction to Swift. So with Swift, when we think about what Swift is, really it's a device that creates non-destructive energy that is used to stimulate an immune response. Okay. In this particular instance, we're using microwaves, and we'll talk about why microwaves are really unique in their ability to stimulate an immune response. But that's what we're doing. Okay. We're using low power energy to create some heat, which then triggers this immune cascade. Okay. So in its purest sense, this is kind of the really interesting piece of science. Immunotherapy is a fairly common buzzword you hear used in cancer treatments and very advanced sort of medical treatments these days. And so typically that's done through a pharmaceutical of some sort. And this device is the first device to be able to deliver that type of immune response with a medical device. So that's its most sort of unique characteristic, is we're triggering this really kind of impressive immune response at higher immune marker levels than some cancer treatments, which are hundreds of thousands of dollars per year and really hard on your body. We're doing it with this box that's in your office right now. So really, really cool technology at a scientific level. Okay. We launched this device in 2016 in the UK. We're getting real world efficacy of 85% plus clearance. We'll talk about the stats more specifically as it relates to different sort of patient groups in a second. We got our 510K clearance here in November 2018 in the US, and we launched commercially in January 2019. So just to be clear about the FDA clearance, the clearance is broad, like most 510K clearances. It's a broad clearance. So the nice thing with that is that we get to apply that to a variety of conditions. So we don't have to reapply every time we get or we want to start treating something different, like IPKs or molluscum or fungal nail, for example. So the actual 510K clearance is it's intended for the coagulation of soft tissue lesions during non-invasive procedures. Doesn't really mean a lot. And it's not intended for cardiac procedures. So that's like how the FDA classified it. Imblation actually makes all of the medical microwave generators for Medtronic currently that are used in like heavy tumor ablation and cancer-related therapies. So this is like a smaller miniaturized version of that device. And so that's what we had our predicate for our 510K clearance. Okay, so someone says, oh, is it, can we use it on IPKs? Is that is that off label or, whatever that looks like? The answer is yes. So we have our clearance for general surface-based treatment. And then within that, that allows you to treat a variety of pieces, but we do not have direct FDA approval for toenail fungus or for IPKs. Most medical devices don't get direct approvals for those. You get 510K clearances. So just to clarify that in case anyone has any questions on it.
I do have a question, Pete.
Yeah.
In the information, it says this cannot be used on diabetic patients. Why is that?
Yeah, so the diabetic patient is really just an immune marker. So you absolutely can use Swift with diabetic patients. What we say to them, or anyone who has any kind of, because we're an immunotherapy device, anyone who has a weakened immune system. So pregnancy is a great example. So pregnant women, what we say to them is you may require an additional treatment. So our average is going to be between 2 to 3 treatments before we see good evidence of progression with these lesions. But with diabetics or with pregnancy, you just want to message them and sort of communicate to the patient up front that you may be 3 to 4, and just to give them that sense. Yeah. So
well,
that's
why would Swift have as a warning that says not recommended for use on diabetic patients? That was in part of the literature.
Yeah, no, and that's part of their FDA clearance submission. So it's like, hey, with immune compromise, if there are immune compromised patients, that's like a warning. That's all that's there for that particular reason, because we're using an immunotherapy.
Safe and effective for pregnant women.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. This is it. The safety side of this device, just to give you guys full comfort, is it's an incredibly safe technology. I'll go through why that is in just a minute. The only things you would want to avoid if applying this across the entire spectrum of the body would be direct application to the eyeball, like to the eyes, and then to the testes. You wouldn't want to do direct microwave application to the testes. Both of those situations you guys are not going to be dealing with, unless someone decides to go way out of scope. But for the most part, that's going to be not an issue. The only consideration for podiatry practices is if you had any kind of hardware really, really close to the surface. I'll come back to this in a second, but here is an example. You see this illustration here? Mm-hmm. This is sort of an example of how controlled the dose of microwave energy is. So what's not happening with other energy-based devices, you can sometimes get radiation. You'll have like an active electrode and a return electrode, and the energy is going to have to pass from an active to a return. That's not happening with microwaves. With microwaves, we actually just get depth of penetration into a very, very controlled treatment zone. There's no refraction of energy like we get with laser. Like you don't have even with nails, for example, if you are treating through a nail, the nail doesn't refract microwave energy. Microwave energy passes transparently through the nail and through tissue. So whether it's callus tissue or very vascularized tissue, microwaves travel in very, very straight lines. So you get this controlled depth that only goes to 3.2 millimeters. So if you think about interaction with hardware, so let's say you had some kind of you had metal plating. Even at that, you're very, very infrequently going to have anything that comes anywhere close to 3.2 millimeters in depth to the surface of the tissue. It would usually be deeper into the tissue. So it's a really, really safe technology, just to give you guys that comfort level. And there's no contraindications, just so we're clear. There's no patients who are contraindicated with Swift. There's just warnings as per the FDA.
I was just curious. I read that about diabetics. I just was wondering the reasoning behind that. But thank you for covering that.
Yeah, it just means we treat them more often, right? Or more frequently.
Yeah, you might just need. You might. That's the thing. You may not, but you might need an additional dose just to stimulate their immune response. Yeah.
Hey, how are you there? Have a little training session. Good to see you, man.
I don't want to interrupt anything.
I can send you. Yeah. Sorry about that.
No problem. All right. So we'll dive into the objectives for today. So it's about confidence in the treatment and in the technology. We want to talk about patient conversion and then how that experience looks for the patient. How do we make that as high quality an experience as possible? Because that's really going to help with further patient referrals. So we do see a lot of that. You will have experiences where the patients are like, you'll have those kind of like, I wouldn't call them life-changing. For some patients, it is life-changing, but those ones that have been struggling with warts for years, and when you finally see that resolution, like they're going to be dying to tell other people about it, and they'll be happy to do video testimonials. Like they'll be shouting it from the rooftop. So really important to kind of tap into that and make sure their experience is of a high quality. We'll talk about protocol management and troubleshooting. And then there is a form for everyone to sign. So if you are going to be doing treatments, we just ask, there's a form that you have to sign and sort of scan back to us to have you sort of officially certified once you've gone through this training. Does that sound good?
Officially, yes.
Perfect.
As long as we get little plaques that we can put on the wall.
That's a good one. Yeah.
With everybody's name.
I'm going to write that down. Wood framed plaques.
There we go.
All right.
Pete, yeah.
Yes.
Is it true that if you treat a wart somewhere on the body, that a wart somewhere else on the body can be eradicated?
Correct. Yeah, we get a global response. So we've seen that a lot. It would be something where I'd say if you had a patient who had plantar warts but also had warts on the hand, I wouldn't make any guarantees on it, but say we often see this happen. So, it'll be interesting to see how your body responds, but I wouldn't be surprised if the warts on your hands cleared up as well. So we've seen it on hands, we've seen it on genitals. Once the body, like it's really powerful. Once the body identifies HPV, we'll go through why that is such a problem. But once it learns to identify it, it goes out and tries to seek out and destroy anything that looks like that. So it is pretty cool how it does that. Okay, so this is just our agenda. We're going to talk about HPV and warts. So to that point, being able to kind of understand the real problem is really important. We'll talk about how microwaves work. We'll talk about the treatment protocol, how to work the device, patient communication, experience management, some technical troubleshooting. We'll talk about IPKs. And then we might save this for later. We'll just touch on it, but Connor and Sean can go into that in depth on Monday. And then we'll talk about funding your program as well. Okay, first thing, the problem. So this is really to understand why warts are such a challenge. And it's really important because to understand the issue allows you to kind of position Swift as the solution, right? So just for everyone's understanding, like warts are generally recognized as like one of the most challenging conditions to treat, whether you're in podiatry or in dermatology or in, if you're a pediatric physician, your primary care, warts are really, really challenging. The highest efficacy level in published studies for plantar warts is around 33%. So, and that's not much higher than placebo. So if you go and look, if you're a patient, you get diagnosed with plantar warts and you're like, oh, okay, let me go see what I should do. The literature online basically says you should do nothing because your chances of it just spontaneously resolving is just about as good as going through cryotherapy, sal acid, destructive therapy. Like it's almost the same. So a lot of people don't do anything. So what we're hoping with our marketing efforts is we mobilize people who've chosen to do nothing and to actually get them to come out and seek treatment. So that's part of the marketing approach. The reason why warts are such an issue is because they do HPV itself, so viral condition. The wart is just your tip of your iceberg. The actual body of it is this HPV infection, right? And so it exists in this remote location in the epidermis. There's no surface markers to alert your Langerhans cells. So these virally infected cells go completely undetected. So your Langerhans cells are like your patrol cells who look for issues or infections in your tissue. They're like your sort of your cops kind of patrolling the streets. They can't see the infection. So this is why warts persist for so long. The reason why they can't see it is you have this E6, E7 oncoprotein production, which reduces antigen presentation. So it basically shuts down your immune system. And your body's like unable to identify that it's infected. The other issue with HPV is that all of the different strains, and there's many, many different strains of HPV, they all react very differently to different treatments. So cryotherapy, for example, like is proven, like it will not work with a whole bunch of different strains, but it can work sometimes with other strains. Like so then you'd have to say, well, all right, I'm going to have to figure out and biopsy every single wart and send it off for pathology and figure out which strain of HPV I have before I treat it. Like that's obviously unrealistic. With Swift, we are strain independent. So it does not matter what type of strain of HPV you have. We're going to alert the body to the presence of it. Okay. So a very common problem with a high degree of recalcitrance and high degree of recurrence. So a lot of frustrated, failed patients out there. Any questions on that?
Okay, so you're saying that most adults, when they get a plantar wart, they have 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, that's right. I'd agree. 5 to 10 year adult duration, like that's quite common. Like it's very common for these warts to be around for quite a long time. That's like it's a very common situation.
And then for the population, it's a 41% probability.
Yeah, lifetime. Yep, 41% will have plantar warts throughout their life.
Wow. Okay.
Yep, it's really, really common. Yep. But probably, yeah, most people just kind of like ignore them, and sometimes they do go away on their own. This is the thing. Like eventually there can be trauma which alerts the body to the presence of so there's something that happens. And that's just to back up. That's kind of that's all you're doing with sal acid or cryo. You're trying to create enough insult or enough trauma to the area to stimulate some kind of response from your Langerhans cells. That's what's going on there when you deal with destructive therapy. And so sometimes there can be enough trauma to the area where your body's like, oh yeah, okay, sorry, something happened here. Let me go check this out. And they see what's happening and they're able to go in and eradicate it. Okay. Now with that frustration, it's not just frustration for the providers treating it. That's why it's so hard to treat, but the patient journey is something that's really important. So we've surveyed a bunch of patients, and understanding their journey is really actually quite important. So most of them will self-diagnose over Google. That's kind of the most important piece. That's where we try to hit them with some of our marketing. But then they'll go over the counter. Then they'll go to a primary care, and then they end up in this frustration zone where we call it, where they're bouncing around between the dermatologist and the podiatrist, and they keep blaming the provider for why it's not getting better versus like just understanding that warts are just a really, really challenging condition to treat. So this is quite common. They'll be like, oh, I tried that person, it didn't work, so I went to this person, and then I hope that this person would be able to help me. And they're kind of all just doing the same sort of stuff. So trying to take these patients out of this frustration zone is important. Also, understanding the journey, like what's really helpful when talking about Swift is to say, great, so tell me about your journey. And what did you do over the counter? Okay, you did some cryotherapy stuff. Okay, gotcha. How did that go? No, it didn't work. Okay, primary care, what happened there? Oh, we did more cryotherapy. Okay, and that didn't work. All right. Then you can say to them, well, did anyone sit down and explain to you why it wasn't working? Like, did anyone explain to you why destroying the wart was maybe the wrong approach? And if no one's done that, you're just in a really good position to position yourself as the authority now to say, well, it's kind of like treating the symptom versus the root cause. Like, I don't want to keep trying to destroy your wart. Your wart is just a symptom of your underlying HPV infection, right? You have a viral infection, and we need to address your viral infection. If we do that, your wart will go away. Right? Like the wart is just this bump. It's just the tip of the iceberg. We have to address the iceberg. And it's just a nice way to kind of get them in the right mindset. Okay. Microwaves and how they work. I'll just play this system over. this is kind of just a nice way to give you guys a sense of how, what the system is, its components, what we're doing in theory with Swift, just kind of an intro sort of explainer video. So let me know if you can hear this.
Swift, microwave therapy for skin. Swift is a new treatment system for the coagulation of soft tissue. The Swift system features a unique, lightweight, and portable generator, which is controlled by a user-friendly interface. Microwave power is contained within a robust, permanently cool cable and is connected to the generator using a simple, self-locking mechanism. The applicator is easily attached and removed with a mechanism that provides audible, visible, and tactile feedback. The Swift cable is also highly flexible to allow for natural movement and minimal resistance while carrying out a treatment. An innovative single-use applicator tip is used to deliver energy into the skin to a predetermined depth, eliminating the need for sterilization and mitigating the risk of cross-contamination. Infected tissue can exist several millimeters below the skin's surface. Swift delivers a precise, highly controlled energy dose that rapidly elevates tissue temperature. With no smoke or plume, Swift vastly reduces many of the hazards associated with other energy-based treatments. As microwave energy travels into the tissue, the water molecules try to align with the microwave field, causing them to collide and create friction. The heat generated creates a highly accurate zone of treatment. In just seconds, the treatment is complete and the healing cascade begins immediately. Treated tissue is quickly repaired, replaced, and regenerated. Swift. Treat with confidence.
So that's just a bit of a general overview on the system itself. We'll talk about the mechanism of action in more depth. Like, they don't go into what happens behind the scenes. What they talk about is how microwaves create friction, and that's what creates heat. So the next element of that is, so what? We've created heat. What is that doing? So we'll talk about that in just a second.
Yeah, the presentation mentioned coagulation.
Yeah, it does. It doesn't do that. That's as per the FDA clearance.
Oh, right.
So it's like, it's a non-coagulatory impact.
Okay.
So with power comparisons, what you'll get is questions from a patient. They'll say, "Are you going to stick my foot into a microwave oven? Like, what do you mean microwaves?" If they have a question about that, to give you guys this comparison, microwave ovens operate at about 1,000 watts of power. Swift operates at 10. Okay, for the most part, you guys are going to be doing 8 watts of power, but 10 is the maximum. The system can go higher, but it's your tip, the actual disposable tip, that regulates the amount of power coming out of the device. It's got sensors built into it to say, this is a podiatry-based tip. We only want to allow 10 watts maximum. So when you think about that, 8 watts of power as compared to a microwave oven is very different. What it is more akin to is taking a phone call with your phone up against your foot. So any smartphone uses microwaves to transmit power, and so that is they operate at 2 watts of power. Swift is at 8. So very more like a cell phone than it is a microwave oven, if that makes sense.
So, Pete, question: do you have other practitioners using this at different depths? Non-podiatrists using this?
So we have dermatologists, but in terms of surface-based, like skin lesions, we don't have any need to go higher than 10 watts at this stage. There may be a scenario where we can increase power to treat other things. Where microwaves are used at higher power levels is for like liver ablation, for example, like if you have, or like kidney tumors, and you actually want to cook the tissue, like that's where you can get into much higher power ranges. sort of 120 to 150 watts, and actually cook tissue and destroy it. That's how microwaves are used in like interventional oncology at the moment. So for skin-based lesions and trying to trigger this immune response, we want to keep it at a much lower level. We've talked about this, but what I will show you next, this is kind of the part that makes sense. So when the science behind this, it was interesting as they came from those more high-powered devices and started to say, all right, we want to miniaturize the components and use this on skin-based lesions. They thought they'd be using a higher power level, and they thought they would have to destroy lesions that, you know, like they were with these more advanced cancers. And what they found, which was really interesting, was that the lower they went with the power, the higher the efficacy was, and the better the outcomes. And it didn't make sense at the time. This was back in like 2014. And so the scientific team went in and started to figure out what was actually going on. And what they realized is that when they kept the actual temperature range below 50 degrees, so at a non-ablative level where you aren't destroying tissue, and you keep it into what we call the hyperthermic range, which is between 43 to 46 degrees C, just enough to very quickly elevate tissue temperature, but then allow it to drop down between your doses of energy. What you were getting is this release of what's called heat shock protein 70. And that's the key to upregulating your Langerhans cell activity. So it's like sending out a massive alarm signal to your body saying, we have a problem. So rather than killing the cells, right, and going in and just trying to destroy everything and kill it all, what they found, which is way more effective, is to just go in and create stress and create like this shock within the cells to say, what was that? The cells go through this process of then rebooting, almost like rebooting your computer and recognizing that your computer was infected with a virus and being like, wow, I didn't even know I had a virus, but I just did a reboot and my malware tells me that I've got a virus. And all of a sudden it's like massive alarm signals go up. We have a huge problem here. And then your body comes in and can heal it without destroying stuff. It actually just goes in and kills off your infected viral cells, and preserves everything else. So that's why we don't have to bandage. We're not creating a wound. Your body's going in and naturally healing this and getting rid of this infection from the inside versus just trying to kill stuff. Does that make sense? That part of it?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Of course,
again,
when you do this, you have to target the right cells, right?
Yeah, you have to target infected cells. Like you have to, if we do this on non-infected cells, like the cells go through a reboot and there's no alarm signal because they haven't found any infection. So yeah, you want to apply Swift to those infected cells to get them to create that alarm. Okay, I'll send you guys a PDF version of this, and you'll have this. But if anyone wants to go deeper into the science, like if you're quite interested in that, if you want to, this study, the primary study they did in 2017 when it was published, is really, really cool in terms of how it demonstrates that immune response. So this was a study on the worst of the worst plantar warts. So average age of the wart was 5.3 years. They excluded kids to make it as hard as possible. Had to have had 2 failed treatments previously. And in that study, they got 76% clearance, but would have been 83 if they collected the data later. So got really, really impressive results when it came to really, really challenging plantar warts. How that data now shapes up, they've got this is a waiting publication, but it's where they've allowed us to share it with our clinics who invested in Swift. The efficacy range, this is in a post-clinical follow-up across 13,000 patients. And this includes a lot of patients who are lost to follow-up. So these numbers are actually lower than what we see normally. What you'll see though is this sort of consistently high efficacy rate higher in kids. The real world data for kids is more like 90%. And for adults, it's more like 80, sort of mid 80s. Elderly would be high 70s. But what that is really just saying, you can see a variance based on immune health, right? So the older the patients, you see a lower efficacy, but that is mostly because elderly patients are like, after 2 or 3 treatments are like, whatever. And we lose them to follow up more often. Then with kids, it's like, on average 2 treatments, sometimes 1. We'll show you some photos of that before they start to resolve. So it's easier to keep the kids in protocol just based on fewer treatments. The one thing I want to outline here or highlight is this piece of data. This efficacy being like 3 times higher than destructive therapy is very, very good. And it's very impressive, but this is actually more impressive. So this long-term recurrence data of less than 1% is, it staggers most scientists, because the theory would be that you would see much more recurrence just based on general transmission rates. So what they're trying to study this, and it's to be determined. But what this is suggesting is not only are we switching your immune system on to treating the virus, but we're actually giving it some degree of immune memory, almost like a vaccine. So that's what these, that's what vaccines are a big topic these days, right? But it's teaching your body how to identify COVID-19 or other, types of viruses. Well, this is what this is doing. We're teaching your body how to identify and react to HPV. And so the implications are like mind-blowing. So we can't get too far ahead of ourselves, because now we're talking about, preventing cancers, but that's kind of where it's going. And it's a really, really strong piece of data that you can quote to your patients with confidence, saying we have less than 1% recurrence with the treatment. Okay, let's get into treatment protocols. So this is for plantar warts in specific, and we'll go through details in terms of how this varies, but our typical treatment protocol is 2 to 3 treatments spaced 4 weeks apart. Okay. And we space them 4 weeks apart. And it really is sort of a range. It's between 28 and 35 days is where you want to try to book your patients in, so that you can align to the immune cycle. So the body has an immune cycle it works through, and you want to have treatment spaced out 4 weeks apart. There's going to be variances to that. So like patients got to go away to college, or, patients got to go on a holiday. If you have to do something at 3 weeks, it's not a problem. We just saw in the data when they varied it to like 3 weeks or less, you saw a statistically significant drop in efficacy. It wasn't huge. It was like 6 or 7%, I think. But it was enough to say we should really try to stick to the 4 weeks. But having said that, if it's like, the odd one that's at 3 or the odd one that's at 5 or 6, it's not going to derail the impact of Swift. So shoot for that 4 weeks as much as you can. But if you don't get there, it's not going to, ruin anything. When we talk about this follow-up, we'll talk about when we book this in, but really the goal of Swift, the goal with the treatment is to treat a patient until you start to see strong evidence of progression. Swift is designed to stimulate and start the fight against the HPV virus. Once the fight is happening and the body is starting to win that fight, it'll almost never go the other way. So what ends up happening is we get them to a stage where at 2 to 3 treatments, we're like, okay, I'm seeing really good progression here. I can now book you in for a 12-week follow-up, and we're going to let this fight play out, and your body's going to win. But Swift has done its job. We now have a battle happening. Before there was no battle. We just had a whole bunch of bad guys, and the good guys didn't know they were there. Now at least there's a fight, and our good guys almost always win this fight. So that was Swift's job. We're kind of like the battle initiator. And once we do that, then we book them in for a 12-week follow-up. What can happen here is that during that 12-week waiting period, they'll have the wart or the lesion just like slough off in the shower or in their bed, and they'll be like, oh my God, like that's brilliant. All of a sudden I'm completely healed. And so sometimes you won't hear that. They won't call you and be like, hey, just letting you know my warts are fully gone and I'm fully healthy. This is great. And, all of a sudden it's like they don't show up for a 12-week follow-up and you're like, what the heck? And you call them, they're like, oh yeah, sorry, I didn't let you know. I'm fully good to go. So just be aware of that. And you can tell the patients like, hey, if it does happen, just take a selfie or shoot me a photo or just let us know. And just so we don't, we're not, wondering what happened to you. And then we'll talk about energy protocol in just 1 second, but typically you're going to be at around 8 watts for 2 seconds and 5 doses. So I will explain that next. Any questions at all on the spacing or the booking in for follow-up?
I think we're good.
Awesome. Okay, so the treatment itself, the key thing to highlight here, and I won't go too deep into the power and time just yet, but the important thing to note here is that when we're delivering doses of energy, so when we talk about a treatment, right, it can involve multiple like treatment zones, but when you're delivering those treatment zones, you want to do 5 doses. And you want to stay on the same area for all 5 doses. So you get this sort of heat stacking effect as you work through it. So that's an important piece to highlight is the importance of staying on the same area. You don't want to treat, do 1 dose here and then do this one and then this one and keep kind of rotating around. You want to do all 5 before moving to a new zone. Okay. Important to recognize, Dr. Jensen, as you highlighted, you do not need to treat all areas of this lesion. I'll go through how to kind of strategically approach a few different examples in just a second. And then really the only 2 variables, because the doses will always be 5, number of doses. The only variables are power and time. Your time is always going to be 2 seconds. So now really it's just a matter of how many watts you're going to have on there. Okay, and I'll show you how that's going to look here next. Okay, so these images were provided by Tracy. She's I don't know if you guys know Tracy Vahovic, but she's the quote unquote wart queen, which is not the most appealing title, but she embraces it nonetheless. She's out of Temple, and she is a avid Swift user. And so I'll just give you examples of how we would approach these particular cases. So if I start with the one on the right-hand side, if this one, you see there's a bunch of different lesions and you sort of look at it and go, okay, well, what's my approach here? Am I going to treat every single one of them? The answer is no, we don't have to. What we want to do here is pick sort of some primary mother lesions and go after those. And the satellite lesions will resolve as we stimulate this global response. So for this one in particular, what we would do is we would sort of select, 5 doses here. We might do 5 doses here. I'd move on to this one and do, 5 doses over here. Maybe 5 doses there. And then depending on how that looks, maybe 5 there. And then I would leave the rest. Okay, so that might take you, I don't know, for a big wart, big sort of scattered mosaic like this, might take you 7 minutes of treatment, maybe, possibly. But again, just picking your primary lesions on this one. When it comes to something like this, this is a pretty gnarly one, and we're actually seeing some good progression with this patient now, which Tracy was like, if we can solve this guy, we're publishing this in every journal in the world. But this warts for like 20 plus years or something crazy. But we're seeing some good progression, so that's nice to see. So with this one, again, huge area. You're like, oh God, am I going to deliver energy to all of this? Again, no, we're going to take a strategy to it. So you might do 5 doses of energy here. You'd break this pad up and go maybe 5 doses here, 5 doses over this side. Another 5 doses here, 5 doses on this side, and then work your way down. Another 5 on this end, and 5 down lower on the foot. Now, this patient might say to you, I've had these warts for 20 years. Please just don't worry. Go and deliver as much energy as you possibly can. I want to get these things gone, rightfully so. There is the device comes with a disposable tip, as you guys saw in the video. So these tips, they have a 15-minute working lifespan. So there's a fuse in there. So after the 15 minutes, it blows the fuse. So we've almost never had a fuse timeout. Like, you're almost never in a scenario where you go through the full 15 minutes. This patient, when Tracy treated this patient, it came close. It was like almost, and she did a lot of doses. But just to give you an example of how you might approach that, they might say, no, do the full 15 minutes, just give me as much as you can. And in which case you can say, okay, I'll do it. Not that it's needed, but the patient might be sort of saying for their own comfort, they'd prefer that. If we look at the patient on the left-hand side, this one's kind of more typical. So with this one, based on the size of it, from what I can see, you might split that in half, and you might do 5 doses on this side and 5 doses over here. So the evidence of this one is this progression. So this is more typically what we see. So this is on first treatment. Second treatment we're delivering here. By this time at the 3rd treatment, you can still see that we're not fully resolved yet, but we're seeing really good evidence. So at this stage, you treat them for the 3rd treatment, and you can say to them, I'm really happy with the way your body's responding. Swift is doing its job. I'll see you back in 12 months. And when we debride this, if there's anything remaining, if we debride it away, we're going to reveal really good, healthy tissue underneath.
You mean 12 weeks, right?
Yeah, 12-week follow-up. We'll see you then. But we're really happy with how things have gone here. When you sort of have this judgment call as well, I would always do the 3rd treatment. If you have someone who comes in for a 4th, if you're kind of on the fence, it's interesting if you present them with the option and you're like, hey, we can do treatment. I'm seeing good progression here. So I don't know if we have to do it. Like, if you're happy with the way things are progressing, most patients will choose to do it, even though it's out of pocket. And it's going to be, $250 or whatever you guys choose to charge. That's an average price. But most will choose to do it, even for the 4th. Even if you're saying like, we probably don't have to. Most will be like, nope, I'm happy with the way this is progressing. Please do it, because I don't want to give this thing a chance of not working. It's an interesting sort of paradigm where you're kind of like, most people would probably say no if you gave them the option. Like, no, actually, by the time you're there and if it's improving, they'll say yes. Okay, just to give you an example of some stuff that you might see. Again, this is a younger patient. So this is the same foot. This is after 1 treatment and full resolution. So you will have these examples. And you'll also have examples that go into the 4th treatment, and some patients will just need longer. Okay. But you will have patients on the upside who see really nice, quick resolution, just to set that expectation as well. To play a good visual of the timing of the treatment and how the energy is delivered. And you can see how he sort of resets between doses of energy. So I'll let it play out for a full treatment, just so you guys have a sense for the timing and how it looks. You'll also hear 2 audible beeps. That is you hear that when the actual dose begins. You can see the device will go solid green color in this in and around the tip, and that means it's delivering energy. And then there'll be a double beep when the energy dose is completed. So it just gives you a nice sense of what the treatment actually looks like.
Okay. Now 2 seconds. We do this 5 times.
So that's a treatment.
In the manual, it says not to use on broken skin,
Correct. Yep.
but it looked like on that, is that broken skin on that one? Is that?
No, so Dr. Hochstein, he'll actually do a local. He's one of the very few who likes to. So that's that. You want to avoid broken skin because you don't want to have any sort of pooling of fluids or any blood that comes through. So if you're going to debride down, you don't have to. As long as you have a flat surface for the probe to rest on, that's fine. The energy will pass through callus tissue. So if you debride it down a little bit, no problem at all. Just avoid going down to like pinpoint bleeding. You don't want to have any moisture because the microwaves will actually, or the moisture will absorb the microwaves faster than the rest of the tissue. So you just want to make sure it's dry before you treat.
Okay.
Yep. So that's the example. What I will say is you'll notice that he's not pressing too deeply into the tissue. It's just a really gentle contact. You don't have to press in too deep. If you do, you'll create, you'll press it deeper. It'll be more sensitive for the patient, so they'll feel more pain. So you don't have to. It's just this gentle contact. You press the button, and then the machine counts down for the 2 seconds. Okay. Any questions at all on that?
No, I think we're good.
Perfect.
So I have a question. Where is this wart queen located?
She's in Philadelphia. She's in Temple.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So she's and officially there is no wart king at the moment.
There's no wart king, so we could especially we could be the wart queen. That would be really weird.
That's right. All right. So this is what you guys will have a link to this. Well, I'll send this in the attachment as well. But it just gives you some guidance. So what you'll notice here is we've got it sort of adjusted by the patient profile. So whether it's an adult or child, sort of youth, and then where the lesion is located. So the reason we do that is because it's sort of all down to thickness of skin and just how much energy you want to press in to make sure you get the microwave energy through to the right amount of infected tissue. So for kids who are on the sole of the foot, they're going to be around 6 to 7 watts of power as a rough range, targeted range. And for adults, I would go with 8. So we sort of have it as a range between 7. I would start with 8, and I'll talk about that in a sec. But you want to start with 8. 8 times 2 times 5 is like our standard plantar wart, bottom of the foot protocol for adults. If you do that consistently and you space your doses out the same way you just saw in that video, so it's delivery of energy, you reset your time to 2 seconds, deliver the energy, reset. If you do that consistently, you will get that 85% clearance rate that we see. Where sometimes you can vary this is if you've got a patient who's like particularly sensitive to pain, you can vary it down. So you can take it down, and just 1 watt it alone will actually will be sort of enough to adjust their pain level. We'll talk about how we manage that a bit later in the presentation. There's a couple easy techniques to get people through that. Just so you guys are like, it's very variable. Go ahead, Dr. Jensen.
Oh, just a quick question. So periungual, you mean right under the fingernails? Warts under the fingernail? Right
under the nails, like toenails. You can go, again, microwaves will pass right through it. So really nice solution for periungual, subungual warts, which are usually really tough to treat.
Every once in a while, but it shouldn't damage the nail at all, right?
Nope. That's right.
That's awesome.
At that power level, you won't get any nail damage. No damage to the nail bed.
Okay.
Yep. In fact, yeah, if they've got fungal nail, you might see clearance of that too, just as a early heads up.
Oh, I was just thinking, HPV is like all over the body. What about anal warts and crazy stuff like that?
Totally.
Swift
Yeah. I mean,
ever tried
we're so this chart looks different when we're talking to dermatologists. We have a slide in there that says condyloma because we're treating, genital warts at the moment and seeing some nice results there too. So yeah, we unfortunately don't have any, or fortunately so, don't have any photos of that yet. But those are people who are pretty motivated to get rid of their warts in a non-destructive manner. When you tell them you don't have to burn them or cut them out, they're pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
So
how many different types of HCPV is there?
Oh, what is it like? There's like what is it, 60 some odd subtypes. The total there's like 100 and there's a lot. I can get you the exact number, but there's a lot.
Yeah. And what was your wording? You said that this is not
it's
HCPV
strain,
specific.
Yeah, it's strain independent. Some of the treatment, like biotherapy, is strain dependent. Like it will only be effective on certain strains, whereas Swift is strain independent. It does not matter what type of strain of HPV you have. Yeah. We will be able to alert to the presence of it.
That's cool.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about.
Do you have any pictures?
Go ahead.
Do you have any doctors that have worked specifically with molluscum?
Yeah, we do. Yep, dermatologists. I can connect you with them if you'd wanted to speak to them, but we've got some really good early results in molluscum. So if you guys, I forget your scope of practice, but if you guys see molluscum, we're getting the same viral response, and it's a global response. So it's not, you don't have to treat every single lesion. We're getting clearance globally as well with that. AK is different. With AK, so it's a regenerative response that we're getting. I can send you the paper on AKs. It's really neat. But AKs, you do have to treat every area of the lesion. That's not a global response. That's the only one that's not global. That has to be, you have to deliver energy to the region exactly that is affected. So that's the only one that's different when it comes to that, because it's a non-viral condition, but we're actually seeing this like really impressive tissue regeneration. So they look at nanostring analysis and they see the tissue post microwave treatment is like going back to its original non-infected like structure. So yeah, I don't know if that explains it well, but I can get our scientific team to dive in deeper. But when they look at that nanostring analysis, it's like, wow, okay, we're actually, the tissues are regenerating back to its healthy form. It's not like it's destroying infected cells. It's regenerating.
Okay, tell me about actinic keratosis, because we have a lot of patients that have that on their legs.
Yep.
Where they have those little bumps.
Perfect.
Yeah. So how do you treat that? And
yep. So you just have to you do a lower power setting, and you do it at 3 doses at 3 seconds. So it's a lower power, longer duration. But we saw 91% clearance, or that's what we're seeing, 90+% clearance of AK. So comparatively to, what would you guys use currently? Would you treat this currently?
We're topical steroids and not effective. Right.
So yeah, typical AK treatment would sort of max out at between sort of 60 to 70% efficacy. So we're seeing 90% plus, so even higher than warts. But you have to just treat the entire area. So as long as the probe is 7 millimeters, as long as the probe covers the full area, then you deliver that 3 to 4 watts so start at 4 if you can. If they find it too sensitive with 3 seconds, then you can take it back. I've been treating sebaceous hyperplasia on my forehead just as a test, and I've been doing 4 watts, 3 seconds on my forehead. Actually, no, I've been going 5 watts, 3 seconds on my forehead, very thin skin, and I've found it quite manageable. So 3 to 4 watts, on the leg should be pretty manageable from a pain perspective.
Okay, tell me about sebaceous hyperplasia. What's happening?
Yeah, so that one we're just starting. So that's a neat one. We like it because it's the depth of penetration is good. So it's like it sits in that area of like, hey, we can get our energy gets to that range, and we can create enough heat to actually adjust cells in there. So it's those sebaceous glands, we can either disrupt their function, or with enough energy, depending on how we want to go with it, we can actually kill off those glands if that's where we want to go with it. So
yes. So what were your symptoms? What led you to think that you had a problem?
Oh, for my forehead, you mean?
Yeah, right.
Oh, so I've had these bumps on my forehead for quite a bit.
Yeah.
And then I forgot which dermatologist we were talking to Swift about. And I was like, hey, like, could I treat, well, first of all, what is this? And could I treat it? And he was like, yeah, it's sebaceous hyperplasia. It would fall right into that treatment zone. You could absolutely do it.
Yeah, sebaceous cysts is what they call them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I get the same thing.
Yeah. So anyhow, we're rolling out a case study trial actually in Houston.
Doctor.
Guys,
What?
There's a Dr. Sunil Chilipuri.
Whoa, that sounds like an Instagram.
You're wearing a shirt.
Oh my gosh.
What's
The worries. Austin, that's powerful. Okay. No, we're just coming up with marketing schemes.
Oh yeah. Oh, the best stuff, honestly, is these patient stories are just like absolutely wild, like before and afters, and you get people doing testimonials. It's like so powerful.
Wow.
I'll read you this. Yeah. So like, for example, I got an email from, she's a derm PA, but she just emailed me this morning. Her name's Shanna. She's wicked. She goes, hey, just letting you know, I had a huge win today with Swift. Do you remember the young teen whose mom was from Canada you met on the virtual training? He had 3 treatments. He'd had warts for years and years. Came in today. They're completely clear. They're so incredibly thrilled. The mom is going to be emailing you because she's so impressed with the technology, so happy with the results. She wants to do a patient testimonial for you. Like the patients like come to you being like, hey, can I do a video for you? It's like great for marketing collateral. It's like, I saw all these other dermatologists and all these other podiatrists and it didn't work. Then I saw Dr. Jensen and his team and they cured me. It's like very good for social. Yeah, it's quite, yeah. All these other people didn't do it or couldn't, but Dr. Jensen and his team could. It was kind of like, oh, that's helpful. Yeah. Could you say that louder? Yep. Good. And do it again and tell everyone you know. That's great. Yeah.
We put that in the loop or whatever, and just let it go over and over.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So no, I can. What I was saying is, there's a Dr. Chilipuri who's actually based in Houston. He's like a celebrity derm. He's got a Swift device, and he's one of the globally one of the top ranked derms, and he really nice guy. He's the one who's going to be doing some studies with us on sebaceous hyperplasia and a few other things. So I can connect you in with him or whatever. But he's a super interesting guy. Or you can treat yourself. You can join our study. I'll send you the protocol. We can do it together.
No, that'd be awesome. Since he's local, it'd be nice to be friends with him and work with him. You know,
totally. He's a super nice guy as well, and he's super sharp. Yeah, I'll connect you guys.
Cool.
Okay.
You remind me. Dr. Chilipuri.
Yeah, Sunil Chilipuri. He runs Refresh Dermatology. He's
Refract Dermatology.
Sorry, Refresh Dermatology.
Oh, Refresh. Is he Indian? Like his name?
He is. Yep.
Chilipuri.
Yeah. CHILUKURY.
Okay.
He's probably done tons of like media stuff. You probably recognize him from TV.
Oh, it's a female?
Nope.
Yeah, it's a guy. Okay.
Guy. Sunil, SUNEEL. Very nice guy.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
No, this is nice. So we have resources in Houston. Because,
Yeah, totally.
And as far as, and we just know that Dr. Pignetti has one of these, right?
Dr.
Does
Pignetti,
anyone else have one?
there's Dr. Legal, who, sorry, no, he's Dallas. This is Andrew Schneider. He's over, he's like, he's Tanglewood foot and ankle specialist. I don't know if that's an area. Is Tanglewood an area?
Yeah, Tanglewood is an area. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's one down there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, Houston is ripe for the taking. All right, so let me just walk through the dials and such. So this is the front of the machine, pretty simple. This is your connection point for your connection cable. So there's a little arrow on your connection cable, which is going to be black. So you just want to connect black to black. And then the hand piece itself, you can see there's a little red arrow, and that's going to be red to red on your cable. It's a really simple connection point. You just press it in and it clicks in. So if you're ever struggling with this, if you're ever trying to like force it, just know that there's something wrong. Like it should be very easy just to swivel in and out of. It's quite a nice, easy connection for that. I won't go through everything. I'll just go through the stuff that you're going to care about. So power button over here is important. You won't ever have to worry about start and stop because you're going to be pressing the button. Your reset button you'll only use if this error comes up, and I'll show you what that is in a sec. You don't have to worry about these, and I'll talk about this alert bank in another slide in just a sec. But your two primary dials is your power, so your watts, and your time, right? We've talked about your time is really not going to change from 2 seconds unless you're treating AK, and you'll go to 3. And your watts, you're going to vary that between 8 watts if you're, an adult, or 6 if you're a kid. And then what this display here is it's really trying to say how many joules of energy are we trying to deliver to the tissue. So if it's 8 watts, 2 seconds, that's 16 joules of energy. So the machine is measuring what percentage actually got delivered to the tissue so that you're not missing it. And, if there's bad contact, it'll actually alarm the system. So if the patient, for example, like shifts during the dose or moves away or pulls their foot away, what you'll get is that it'll stop delivering energy. So it's a safety mechanism. You'll see this reflection error, this little triangle here on the left. And that means that the energy wasn't coming back to the system, and you just press reset and you adjust your timer back to 2 seconds or whatever you want the treatment to be, and you deliver the treatment again. Okay. You don't want to turn, if you get that error, you don't want to turn the system off and then turn it on again, because you'll end up expiring the tip. So you don't want to blow the tip.
Okay, say that one more time.
So if you ever get a reflection error, so the patient pulls away and you can't finish the 2-second dose, like the system will actually stop, and you'll get this reflection error. This thing will pop up, and you'll see it on the system. And what that means is that not all of the energy was delivered, so it tried to return the energy back to the system. What you do there is hit reset, and then you adjust your time back to whatever, 2 seconds, and you do your treatment again, like you finish your dose. So it's just a way of the systems to say, if the patient pulls away, we're not transmitting microwaves openly in the office. It just stops it. And that triggers when this percentage falls below 80%. So the most of your doses, you'll see it'll show what percentage was delivered after each dose of energy. Most of the time it'll be around like high 80s or low 90s, which is great. Everything above 80% is within spec of the treatment. If it goes below 80, that's where the system's like, nope, I'm not happy with that. I'm going to turn the dose off. And so that's where you just hit reset and keep going. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Yep, perfect. Won't happen that often, but you'll see it happen every now and then. Okay, if I go to the back panel, your power plug, which is obvious. We don't need to worry about the foot switch because we don't have one, or we're not going to use it. Service access, we don't have to worry about. with the vents on the back, just make sure they're not pressed up against like a sweater, or they're not being blocked by anything. So just give them a little space to vent. It just keeps the system cool, but that's usually not an issue. The one thing I do want to draw your attention to is this auto or manual switch. So you're just going to want to make sure this is in auto mode when you're doing your treatment. So what that means is when you press the button, the system will deliver the time that is set on the actual system. So you just press it once, and then it counts down from 2, 1, 0 and gives you exactly that amount of power. If you have it on manual, if you press the button once, it'll only deliver that little burst for when you press the button. So if you press it in manual mode, you have to like hold it down, and then you're trying to calculate yourself how much time is passing, and it's just a much less accurate treatment. They've got it there as an option in case we do move to a treatment where it's like, I want to be sweeping the treatment area. Like fungal nail potentially may incorporate some manual work where you're going to hold down the applicator and sweep it over the area. That's a possibility, but yet to be seen. So for you guys, just make sure it's always in auto mode. If you ever have a scenario where you press the button and you're used to hearing the 2 beeps and then the treatment and then the 2 beeps to finish it, and you don't hear that and it doesn't finish the treatment, right? You're like, what the heck? And you look at your system and there's no reflection error or anything. And you're like, what's going on? Just check that back of the system and it'll be because it's in auto. If I ever get a phone call, sometimes it's like, Pete, I don't know what's going on. The system, when I press it, it's just not giving energy. It's almost always the fact that it had been switched down to manual. And just so you're clear, that happens maybe once every 3 months or something. I get a phone call. So not common, but if it is going to happen, because that thing's been bumped somehow. Okay. Then we talk about the alert bank. Don't need to worry about this or any of these because you're going to be using handpiece. So that's all irrelevant. That's your reflection error, which we've talked about. The temperature is not something you're going to have to worry about. This is an expired tip alert. So if you put on a tip that's previously been used, it's again to reduce cross-contamination. If you put it on and it's been previously used, it'll tell you that it's expired and it's no good. And then over here, you'll have the alert that you don't have a tip attached. So until you put your tip on, this is going to show. So if you tried to go press it and there was no tip on it, it would say, hey, you got to put a tip on. So that's all that is. And there's a user manual as well. You guys can refer to. This is all in there as well if you have questions. Just so we're all clear, that's the button that we're talking about when we press that button. That's the gray button, which triggers everything.
Where is this?
You're looking quite
okay, now do you guys have it? Have you guys turned it on previously?
you mean this?
That means this. You see that?
Well, no, I'm did I not
We're
bring
just
it
missing a
out?
piece, I guess.
I'm going to stop presenting, and then we can make sure you guys.
Yeah, we were just looking at our machine. We're missing the handpiece.
It might be in the box.
Yeah, it should be. It usually comes in the middle of there's a little foam compartment. It's sort of in the middle of that.
Okay.
So you'll have cable and handpiece.
Okay.
We'll just make sure you've got all those components. And then we don't have to blow a tip, but we'll just make sure you guys can see it. And it powers up and you're good to go.
And then, so have they been using this in Europe on nails, on fungal nails?
They're doing all of the initial
Trials. Oh, you found it.
trials. Yeah.
Thank you. You're good. Thank you so much. Okay, we found our handpiece.
Oh, good. Perfect. So just make sure it all connects properly, and you guys can do that. So just red to red, black to black. Just try that out. So just check the cable and which side has the black end. and that just presses in.
It looks black. Okay. You're right. And then, yeah, you're right. Look at that. It just snaps right in.
And then red to red on the handpiece.
Look at that. Snaps right in.
Yep. And then your tips are really easy connection. I wouldn't attach a tip just now. I would, because again, you don't want to blow one. But that's a really simple connection. You can see there's these little gold prongs if you look at the 3 pins on the actual handpiece. You see those little 3 gold pins?
Yes.
So that,
right here.
Yep, that just connects in. There's these 3 little receptors on the actual tip. So it's a very, very obvious connection point. It'll snap in. And you turn the system on first. So yeah, don't pop one on yet. But when the mode of operation is you turn the system on when you're ready to do the treatment. So you've communicated everything to the patient. You're ready to go. Patient's ready. Then you turn the system on, and then the last thing you do is pop your tip on just to give yourself the max possible treatment time if you want to use it.
Okay.
So yeah, if you got that, then power it up and just make sure all the lights come on. It'll do a self-test or a self-diagnostic every time you turn it on. We'll just make sure it works. And regular wall power is totally good.
Yeah, it's in auto, so.
One guy here works.
And none of us have warts right now. You know what I mean? Is that sad?
It's tough. You guys are healthy off.
Wrestler bat.
Yeah. We also go barefoot at the gym.
I know, that's right. Let's start cranking up the marketing now.
Yes.
Cool. So if it's plugged in, yeah, just power it up and just make sure it turns on and the lights are on.
Where?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Oh yeah, thank you.
I don't think I pushed it. But.
Wow, colors, nice.
Now we're talking colors, fans, and just so you know, if you try to adjust the power and time right now, it won't adjust because the tip's not on. Because the tip is what governs how much power you're allowed to use and stuff with that setting. So perfect. So it powers up. We're all good. Excellent. Super. That's all we wanted to do for that.
Okay.
I'm going to go back to the presentation. So you can power it down now again. I just wanted to make sure all the components were there and you have everything you needed. So let me just share my screen again. 1 second.
What?
All right, we're gonna push through this last little section of it, and then if you guys have questions, we can dive into that as well. But I think we're pretty well there. Patient communication. We talked about this, so we won't go into it too long. But really presenting them with the Swift brochure. So I just want to check, Carol, did you get brochures that came with it?
Yeah, I have a question about that. There's 2 different ones. So there's, I don't know if you can, I can't see what I'm hanging.
Can you see us?
I can't. Sorry, 1 sec.
They're hanging out the car and the one with the girl jumping up in the air.
It says say goodbye to stubborn warts.
So I was looking at there's 2 different, means one better to use than another. I mean, they're just, to me, I don't know.
Can you show me?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry.
Let's,
Okay. Yeah. Sweet.
okay.
So
There's
now on
that one, and then we have,
yeah, you got 2 of them. Yeah. So those are two different versions. So if you hold up the say goodbye to someone with the one, the girl jumping on the beach. Yep. So can you go to the inside when you open it up or on the back of it? There'll be, you see how there's a blank space there?
yeah.
So there's a digital, well, first of all, there's a QR code there. So if you have those, someone can scan that with their phone and they can kind of go through, there's a little animation on the actual patient journey, which talks people through kind of like, it sort of gets them in the right mindset to be like how Swift is going to help them out. And it talks about this like patient journey of this this girl named Taylor who can't play soccer and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so that's kind of cool. So patients can do that, and it kind of gets them in the right mind frame before they see one of you guys to talk about treatment. The other thing you can do too, that's the digital version of that brochure. You can edit that, so you can put your Swift or your own logo in there and add in, your contact detail, and you can order that through Vistaprint, like really, really easy reorder. Or you can order up as many. I mean, you can order them through our website as well. They're like, we just do them at cost. It's like $20 or something for like 100 of them. I can't remember what it is, but we don't make any money on it. It's just a service. If you wanted to order them, you can. But if you want to customize them,
are you saying that we could customize them if we wanted?
Totally, yeah. So the digital version of that,
Yeah.
if you guys want to customize it, go nuts. The digital version is available to you guys on the My Sersha portal. So I'll send Carol the link to that, and you guys can change the wording in it, or you could, you can put your logo in there and put your contact name. It's really good when you're doing outreach to other clinics like dermatologists or pediatricians in the area, to be able to drop those off and have your clinic details on there. So I'd really encourage you guys to do that. So yeah, all those resources are there for you, as well as posters. If you guys want posters, there's options there. You can just pop your clinic logo on there, and you can have those printed. Vistaprint, I don't know if you guys use Vistaprint. It's like a super easy platform just to upload files and print away.
Cool. Okay.
Okay, so I will share my screen again. Okay, so when it comes to patient community, can you guys see my screen? Just want to make sure.
Yes.
Yep. So just to give you guys a little mindset too for the patient, when we're talking about out-of-pocket costs, I think it's important for people to understand this, because when we're talking about Swift, what we want to do is kind of put it into a position where, like, look, your Swift is non-destructive, right? So we're not going after, and we're not trying to destroy the wart. If we're destroying the wart, that's covered through your insurance. There's a couple ways we can go after that. It's going to be 8 to 10 treatments if we want it to be effective. You'll be paying your copays. If you haven't hit your deductible, it's going to be copays plus. But you sort of end up in a position where it's 2 to 3, or it's 8 to 10. So if you want to compare it, like out of pocket, you're going to be comparable. Now, if you haven't hit your deductible, Swift will save you money. So this is kind of like, I don't know, it's something that you should be confident in speaking to pay. We've got some providers who will just flat out be like, no, you're going to save money with Swift. Like I that much I can guarantee. If we want to actually treat this thing through to clearance, Swift will save you money. Now I don't know if I would be that bold, but what I would say is, comparably at 2 to 3, you're going to be out of pocket the same amount roughly. And then that, for me, brings it down to, so now let's just focus on what you think is the best treatment for you. And when we look at that, that's when patient downtime is the biggest feature. So no bandaging, no open wound. You don't have to take time off of running, golf, karate, your activities. It is. You don't have to worry about your kids being in and out of the bath or whatever. It's just like, nope, you're going to come in. I'm going to treat you. You can go back to doing whatever you want for 4 weeks, and then I'm going to come in and we're going to do it again. And we're going to let your body heal this from the inside, not try and attack it by killing things from the outside. So that's when you give them that sort of value prop, that's when you start to get into much higher acceptance range. So you should expect, just at the outset, about 75% of your patients who come through will choose Swift over traditional therapy. You should expect that. If you're getting less than that, just call us and we can talk through maybe why that's not happening. But that's the kind of the rough number that we have for our clients. And then that goes up once you start to see more and more success. So in the early going, it's going to take you 6 months before you're like, okay, I've really got a good handle on how successful or how effective this therapy is for me personally. And you'll have your own stories to tell. And when you start to be able to tell your own patient stories, then it's like you're much more convincing, and it's your acceptance rate goes up to sort of like, 90% plus. So just want to set expectations. There will be people who are like, you know what, I really don't feel comfortable. I just want to do, whatever's covered by insurance. And you're like, okay, no problem. Let's do that. At least you have Swift in the background. So what can happen with those people is they'll do 1, 2, maybe they get to their third like destructive treatment. It's not getting anywhere. And they're like, okay, let's do the Swift thing. All right. As opposed to like, all right, well, now I got to bounce around and go find another dermatologist or whatever. Right. You've always got that backdrop to be like, okay, well, we've got Swift there if we need it. Just to give you that perspective. Any questions on that? Does that all make sense to everybody?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. It makes perfect sense.
Sweet. Okay. Pain management. You'll experience this for the most part. We find it like really quite manageable. Everyone's going to react differently though. So some people will find that it's more painful. People who've had cryotherapy and Swift will say that during the treatment, it's kind of like comparable to cryo, but with Swift, there's no pain after the treatment. And if you came in with painful lesions, it'll be a reduced pain level post-treatment. So on the whole, pain is an advantage with Swift, but there is definitely a bite during the dose of the energy. So when you're delivering that 2-second dose, it's the tissue is increasing in temperature quite rapidly. So if the patient does have this like response to it, it's because they're worried that if the energy keeps going, they will get a burn. To give you guys perspective, you would have to deliver at 8 watts, you'd have to run it for 7.5 seconds before you got to a point where you're burning the patient. So you're never even going to come close to that. So that's kind of nice to know. So what we find, here's a recommendation. There's two things I'm going to recommend for you guys is with adults or kids or whoever, what I recommend is always starting with like a warm-up dose. So if it's an adult and you're going to get to 8 watts, start them off at 5 and just condition them with, okay, I'm just going to give you a little dose of energy. I want you to feel it. And then I want you to feel how quickly the energy drops off at the end of that dose. Okay. So we'll start at 5 and this is going to be just a little tester. You give them 5 watts of energy at 2 seconds and most of them will like feel something and they'll be like, great. Did you feel that? And they'll be like, yeah, I felt it. And what do you feel now? Nothing. You're like, perfect. So I just want to give you that confidence. It's 2 seconds and then it falls off immediately. So you're like, okay, now we're going to go up to 8 watts. And you do your first dose. And usually the first dose, they don't, it's not much. You're like, okay, yeah, no, I felt that one for sure. But now it's gone. You're like, okay, what do you feel now? Nothing. Great. Okay, let's keep going. The third dose is where you're starting to stack the heat. That is the most sensitive of all 5 doses. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, no, I felt that one. Yep. Oh, yep. And they might have a little bit of but it's gone. Or they'll be like, oh, ouch. But then it's gone. And after the third, the fourth and fifth are like easier. So they're kind of like, oh, okay, that's not as bad. So your body's actually like a sort of adapting to the energy dose. So that's kind of the typical explanation. What you can do if you want to distract them is just simply grab the ankle and just give a progressive squeeze as you're counting down from 2 seconds. So it's 2, 1, and then you kind of give like a progressive squeeze on the ankle. And that's just enough to distract them for that 2-second dose where it's like, oh, it kind of just takes the edge off. They're a bit distracted. And that actually really does help. Like I treated she was 6 at the time, my 6-year-old daughter, and we got her to 8 watts and she was fine with it. Like she felt it for sure, but she was fine just because I was distracting her enough. And I wouldn't even now, we don't even go that high with kids. We just go to 6 or 7.
Wow. Okay.
So it is manageable. If you guys do have questions about it, there's a link here to a pain management video. We talk about this with Dr. Bristow, and he goes through different strategies. But yeah, shouldn't be a big problem. You'll see it. But they get through it. And if you do adjust power, I would recommend taking it down by only 1 watt. So if you're at 8 watts and the patient's like, oh, gee, that's too high, you can be like, okay, well, let's take it down. You take it down to 7, and you keep going, and that usually is enough to make a difference. And then if you have to take someone down, let's say you want to have them at 8, but you're down at 6, you can always just give them a 6th dose at the end as well. It's not ideal. You'd rather stay at 8, but if you go down to 6, just be like, hey, we'll just do a 6th dose of energy to get our total amount of joules up. If that makes sense.
Yes, that does make sense.
Cool. Okay, we've talked about.
Ask you, for charting purposes, do you have a paragraph we could use?
Yeah, I have a. Yep, I do. We've got a sort of a consent form if you like. I can send that through, and then it's kind of got like a treatment 1 energy level 2, 3. Yep, so I can send that.
Okay.
Okay, avoiding blown tips. Again, we've talked about this. Just turn your machine on before you attach the tip. And then if you do get an error, just don't turn the system off, hit reset, and you'll be fine. If we get a call, it's what we already talked about. My system's not activating. Just make sure it's in auto mode. Tip isn't turning green. It's probably because it's expired. So just hit reset. It might be a reflection error. Try a new tip. If the problem persists, contact us and we'll walk you through it. Best practice, just make sure the fan can breathe a little bit on the back, and avoid sort of dropping your handpiece or running it over with a trolley or whatever. But for the most part, the systems are very, very robust. So you shouldn't have any, technical challenges. It's one of the things I'm very pleased with is how durable they are. Okay, this is something we've talked about. IPK is really interesting. So this is I'll send you guys this here as well. You can link through the case study and to the interview with Rob talking about what we're seeing with IPKs. The protocol is for treatment is the exact same, except that we actually do debride down to surface level. That's the only difference. This is still early days. So if you guys are keen to start treating with it, what I will do, maybe let me know when you guys want to start treating IPKs. If you want to start treating right out of the gates, that's great. I can send you guys a free box of tips to get going with IPKs.
Yeah, we're ready this week. Actually, we have a couple patients that want to do it.
Amazing.
So if you could just go ahead and send us a box, that'd be wonderful, and then we'll start.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yep. So you guys can use the box that you have to treat those patients. I'll send the box afterwards. I'll give you the link to order a free box. Okay. So the basic sort of theory there is for your first 3 patients, we want to give you the comfort of like, hey, here's how this has worked for these 3 patients. So pick 3 patients, charge them whatever you want, but from our standpoint, tips are free. So do whatever you like just to gather that data. So we want to collect more and more data here. You'll see kind of what the pain management response is, and you can help us figure out sort of the best way to approach the commercials. So, what are we going to charge on treatment 1 versus 2 or 3, that kind of stuff. So seeing really good pain management responses, if not clearance in a lot of cases with these lesions, which is pretty neat. And like I said, that sort of that fat pad restoration as well. So really, really cool. Love for you guys to be involved in that. I'll send you the tips, and away we go. Marketing program. You guys are going to cover this with Connor, so I won't dive into that. You're going to do that on Monday. What I will talk about is this video content. Connor will probably reference it as well. But when you guys get patient testimonials and you can send us those videos, we give you guys $200 tip credits. So it's kind of a neat way to fund the program. Like if you get a bunch of them, we get some free boxes of tips. if you guys send us your own personal videos talking about your Swift experience as well, we'll send you credits for tips as well. And then referral programs. So once you guys get comfortable, if you know other podiatrists or other doctors in other markets, obviously don't want to do it in your local market, don't want more competition, but if you know other people in other areas that you think would do well with Swift, that's where we can issue you. If they end up purchasing Swift and you make the connection, we give you guys $1,000 in marketing credit. So you can spend that towards marketing Swift, or you can spend half of it on Swift and half of it on whatever you want, whether it's website related stuff or other conditions or you name it. We'll let you do that. So yeah, kind of just a neat way to fund the ongoing consumable costs or the marketing spend behind it.
Well, I'm thinking about it. What is the treatment protocol for IPKs?
It's the same as warts. It's the exact same, except that we debride down to surface level before we deliver the energy.
Right. Okay.
So you do your debridement, you deliver the same 8x2 x 5 protocol. You do it every month. And then after the third treatment, what we say to them then is come back. So they're there because of pain. What we say to them after the third treatment is come back and see me when it's painful again. Like, so, you've been seeing the patient every so often. And now after the third, you go, let me know when the pain comes back. And what we're seeing is that time between your third Swift treatment and them coming back in is far more elongated than what it used to be, right? So if they were coming in every 2 months or every month, now you can space them out to every 6 months, 9 months, and you bring them back in for a Swift protocol. Unless they have that underlying verruca, then you get full clearance, and you're like, actually, you had an HPV infection, and we've knocked that out. So that has happened. I think we told you, Dr. Jensen, about 50% of those IPKs, when they've been biopsied, have this underlying HPV infection. So it's kind of like
Interesting.
half of them you should see kind of clearance of.
Exciting stuff. What about?
Awesome. I will send you guys this recording. I'll send you this PDF as well. And if you guys can just fill out those forms when you get a chance, either later today or on Monday, whenever you get time, that would be great. And after that, you guys will be officially Swift certified and ready to go.
So Pete, one more question. What about collagen, enhancing collagen in the foot?
Yep. So I love that area of study. What I would want to do next with that is, so you'll see it with some of these IPK patients, but what I'd be keen to do, Dr. Jensen, if you guys are up for it, is connect in even with our scientific team.
Uh-huh.
We're just securing a bunch of additional funding to launch some like new neat studies, and that area of focus for us in particular is a high priority. So I'd be keen to like almost connect you in with the scientific team in Scotland to talk about what protocols we would use to do that. So let me have a conversation with them about that. And what we'll do is I'll get you to email the research@emblation.com email address to say, hey guys, new Swift user, been talking to Pete about collagen production, really would like to hone in the protocol. Can you send me what you would think or what you guys would suggest? And that's the way to do it in compliance with the FDA. If you guys want new protocols, like email them, they send back the protocol as opposed to me sending it to you. It's almost like I can't send it to you unsolicited. You've got to solicit it from me, kind of thing. So that's how we'll do that. But I would love to tee up like a study on that, because I think that could be really, really, really cool.
I agree. Well, Pete, thank you so much for your time. This has been great.
Yeah, of course, guys. Yeah, we're thrilled to welcome you guys on board. I think you guys are going to do great with the device. So if you guys have any questions at all, just feel free to reach out. And when you have your first treatment teed up, myself or Connor or one of our other treatment consultants can be on. So just let us know when that is, and we'll be on in the background. And we'll set up another sort of Google link like this. And if you
Okay.
guys, if you have any questions during the treatment, it's just nice to know that we're there as a backstop if needed.
Okay, fabulous.
Awesome.
That works.
Okay, guys. Rock and
Have a
roll.
great
Enjoy
day.
the rest of Friday, and great to meet you all.
Okay,
you.
thanks
Bye,
again.
guys.
Okay, bye.
See you guys.
Thanks, Keith.
Say bye.
Okay. We have more.